I've been training my vertical for over 11 years. And in that time, I've taken it from 24 to 50.5 inches. And along the way, I have made mistakes, a lot of mistakes. But from each of those mistakes have come a lot of lessons. And there is a quote that I always think about. It's a dumb person doesn't learn from their mistakes, a smart person learns from their mistakes, and a wise person learns from other people's mistakes. If you want to be wise and jump higher, don't make the same mistakes I made, and hopefully one day you're gonna jump higher than me. And I put this on my Instagram story the other day. If by the end of my life I haven't coached an athlete to jump higher than me, jump higher than a world record 50.5 inches, then I will have considered my career as a coach a failure. So hopefully that is you. Without further ado, let's get into some of the most important lessons that I have learned in my jump training career. The first lesson, plyometrics work, but you have to become a different athlete first. Let me explain what I mean. When I was younger, I never ever did plyometrics because I saw them as a waste of time. I saw it as literally, I could have just spent that time having dunk sessions instead. Why would I waste a good dunk session doing plyos when I could have a good dunk session? And it's because I loved dunking so much, and I still do love dunking a lot. And that's the only thing that I would want to spend doing. Literally, and this is still true to this day, if it was possible to dunk all day without getting hurt, I would probably be doing that. I would be at the basketball court 24/7. But obviously the human body has limits and you will mess yourself up if you try to do that. But that's why I never did plyometrics. Then fast forward, 5-6 years into my jump training career, I was already jumping pretty high, and I started messing around with plyos a little bit in some training cycles, and the results were subpar, right? I would do that plyometric focus cycle, I would deload, and I would jump pretty good, but not my highest ever, right? I didn't break any PRs. It's the same as anytime I do solid training, but not the best training. When I deload, just from, having worked out for that long, and then I deload, I tend to jump decently and maintain vertical pretty well, but I don't reach that top 99th percentile of performance for myself, right? Those 49-inch vertical jump days, those 50-inch vertical jump days. I can basically do any style of training as long as I stay healthy, and then I back off the training, I can jump 45 plus inches. So I then thought, okay, plyos don't work, right? They're overrated. But this last year, when I broke my PR, so after 11 years of training, I jumped the highest I ever had. I actually did lots of plyometrics at 2 different points of the year. The first one was around December. The second one was around late January, I believe. So I did 2 cycles back to back of those plyos. And very end of February, did functional overreach, backed off, jumped the PR. And I realized, whoa, maybe there is something to this plyometric stuff. But the difference between this year and when I've done it in the past is this year I became a different athlete. What I mean by that, when you strength train, take a squat for example, you can make a technique change and improve your squat by 20 pounds. But that doesn't mean it's gonna transfer over to a higher vertical jump. What I mean by become a different athlete, you want to improve your strength so that there's actual physical and physiological changes in your body. You need to become a different athlete. If you take athlete A who squats 100 pounds, you train him for 3 years, and now he can squat 300 pounds 3 years later, he is a different organism, right? He has probably a way more muscular tissue. He's caused neuromuscular adaptations. He's probably more resilient. His tendons became thicker. It's a different organism. Not literally, right? Still a human. But from an outsider, right? They're gonna look completely different. They're gonna be a different athlete. That's what I mean by become a different athlete. When I was doing those plyos, I was doing a lot of strength training, but it wasn't enough to cause an adaptation. And it's because at the time I was dealing with back pain and all these other things that I was kind of training around. So during those periods of time in the year when I was doing a lot of general work, it wasn't very intense, right? I was doing half squats at 300 pounds when I had the capacity to do it at 400 pounds. So if I would have done half squats at my true 90 plus intensity, I then could have gotten more from the plyos. And I say this over and over again, but it's training to train. The general work trains you to be able to handle the plyos. And doing plyometrics when you haven't become a different athlete through the general strength work, it's not gonna be as effective. So plyos work, but just become a different athlete first. The second lesson that I learned through my years and years of jump training is to stop having long dunk sessions. Now, this is more so for the intermediate to advanced to elite athletes. When you're a beginner, it's one of the most beneficial things you can do is to jump a lot and have long dunk sessions. But once you've squeezed out all the gains out of the high frequency of jumping, and this is with the assumption that you're not working on hitting a new trick dunk, that you already have the vertical to hit. So if you're trying to improve your hand speed, your dunk technique, by all means, go have a long dunk session and work on those things. Or if you're gonna have a big group session that you've been planning on doing for half a year, go have fun, have a long dunk session. But if you're mid-training cycle, and if you're specifically trying to jump higher, and you're not a beginner, having too long of a session is gonna derail your training plan. The quality of your lifts is gonna go down, your risk of injury is gonna go up, the quality of the jump session itself is gonna go down, so you're gonna be practicing jumps at sub-maximal intensities and sub-maximal outputs, and it's just gonna mess up the plan. The amount of times I've overjumped and it's messed up the training plan, and I have to go cut volume or cut intensity on a lift is more than I can count. And when you add that up over and over and over and over again over the course of a couple years, the negative effects can be pretty drastic. So if I could do it all over again, this is specifically talking probably around 2019, 2020, when I already had 45+ inch vertical, I would have cut the sessions. And I'm talking extremely long sessions. Like I would have 3-hour sessions, I would have just cut those down to an hour. And cut it while the pan is still hot, when you're still jumping high and you're still feeling healthy. What I used to do is I would jump until my knee started hurting, and then I would cut it. So stop having long jump sessions if you're an intermediate to advanced athlete. Specifically, don't think of jump performance, your training age. Have you put in thousands and thousands of jumping reps? Have you put in thousands of hours and reps in the weight room? If that's you, stop having long jump sessions. My next lesson can be summarized by the tattoo I just got. It's the word focus with the words no in red in the background. The reason I got that tattoo, there's this guy that I watch on YouTube and Instagram, his name's Alex Hormozi, and he defines focus by the quantity and quality of things that you say no to. And when it comes to jump training specifically and increasing your vertical jump, I said yes to playing basketball when my friends would ask me to go play basketball, to a dunk session when I was supposed to be in the weight room getting after it instead, and I already jumped 2 days before. And that shows a lack of focus. Think about the most successful professional dunker of our time, Jordan Kilgannon. He is the definition of maximal focus in the way that I just defined it, saying no to everything except the thing that you're trying to improve on. He completely stopped playing basketball. He doesn't go on long walks or hikes. Anything that could possibly be a detriment to his vertical, he says no to. And that is a lesson in focus. And luckily, I've still been able to achieve great things in my sport, but the amount of times I've subjected myself to unnecessary risk because of playing basketball, right? Because I love basketball at the end of the day. It's my first love. The amount of times I said yes to a dunk session when I should have been training, it shows a lack of focus. Now, my focus might be better than 99.9% of people out there, but it's that 0.01 that if I would have said no to, I would probably be at a better spot than I am today. And when I talk about my mistakes, I get a lot of comments saying, you already have the world record. Like, what are you talking about? And I don't pay attention to that at all. I'm always thinking, what could have been optimized? What can I do better? What can I improve on? It doesn't matter who you're looking at. Nobody's training is perfect. Nobody is perfect. No human is perfect. No matter how crazy their performance is, right? Take Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt probably could have ran faster if his training had been a little better, or if he would have been trying as hard as he could on the race instead of backing off in the last 10 meters. Nobody does every single thing perfect and has every variable down to a science. There's always something to improve on, no matter how good you are. Especially if you're an average athlete, there's a lot of things to improve on. So never, ever get yourself in the mindset of, I know enough, I do everything well. A wise man knows he knows nothing, all right? So keep that in mind. The next lesson's a cool one. You can go from not jumping frequently or not having been training, assuming you've trained in the past and you've dunked in the past or something like that. You can go from out of shape to your best ever in a month. This is specifically to the guys that have the muscle memory, that have put in a lot of jumping in, a lot of training in, but then get lazy or you get demotivated. Maybe you ran into a minor injury and took time off and now you're completely out of the habit of training. You can go from detrain to your best ever, well, specifically to like 95% of your best ever in a month. All it takes is one training cycle where you don't miss a single day, you do everything perfectly, you're focused, you're saying no to the things that are taking you away from that goal in a month. I've seen it over and over and over again. Of course, I don't like to speak in absolutes, there's outliers. But for most athletes, this is the case. And this is really important because you can be very demotivated, right? And if you're like me, training is directly tied to mental health. I love moving. There's another tattoo I have right here. It's an Aztec symbol for movement. And it's because I find movement so important in my life. And if that's someone that's you, you're probably feeling pretty crappy by not training and not moving frequently. So use that as motivation. If you can just put in 30 days in a row of training, train for 3 weeks, deload for a week, and that jump session at the end of the deload will be a top 5% dunk session for you, right, in terms of performance. And then along with that, this is a lesson I learned last year. You can go from a serious injury to your best ever in a year. I tore a tendon in my leg in February 2023. Tore it. Worst injury I've ever had. And in February 2024, jumped 50.5, the highest flight time I've ever recorded. Literally my best performance. And that was in a little under a year. So even though we're humans and our time here is short, you have a lot of time. A year is a long time. A lot of athletes try to think in terms of like week to week progress, but if you can zoom out and just look at it in terms of month to month and then even year to year, you can become a completely different athlete in that period of time. All it takes is 3 to 6 months to be insanely good, right? Maybe you haven't started, you haven't pulled the trigger on training. If you are relatively untrained and you train for 6 months straight, you won't even recognize the person you were before. Okay? Use that as motivation if you're in a period of low motivation. The next lesson, and this was because I was stupid, don't stop lifting. In mid-2016, I had got my vertical to a 44-inch vertical, I believe, at the time, and I was lifting consistently, and then my dumbass was like, I want to see how much I could improve by just jumping, right? I think at the time I had seen a lot of athletes that just jumped. I was doing a lot of professional dunk contests and seeing these athletic freaks that literally just dunk and play basketball every day, and that's how they train to jump higher. And I was like, I wonder if I'm genetically gifted like they are. Let me take a year off and only jump. And I proceeded to, mind you, I was jumping 3 or 4 times a week at this time after 3 years of training, of jump training, so I had a decent training age. And my vertical dropped by probably at the lowest by like 4 inches. But it averaged out to around like a 41, 42-inch vertical at the end of that year, plus dealing with knee pain, a lot of knee pain. So, horrible mistake. Don't stop lifting, guys. Keep training. Don't stop. It's good for you. And then along with this point, I wish I would have periodized my training. Specifically, I wish I would have known the balance of high volume, low intensity, to high intensity and low volume. If I would have just done that style of training, month to month, I would have been way healthier. I would have progressed way more in terms of my vertical, and in the weight room, I would have progressed way more. And I wish I would have just looked that up. I used to look up jump training on Google and stuff like that, but the sources were horrible. I wish I would have just hopped into Google Scholar or something like that and looked up periodization and applied it to my training. That's the other thing. Because I did start learning about it kind of late into my jump training career. Wasn't until I met John Evans, who is my coach, by the way. If you don't know him, type on YouTube John Evans Jump Training, subscribe to his channel. But it wasn't until I met him that I really started realizing how bad my training was, but I would have had so much progress. Just by understanding that balance of intensity and volume, start periodizing your training. If at minimum, it's using that balance between intensity and volume, and you'll thank me. My next lesson, clean pulls, high clean pulls, and panda pulls are gonna improve your power clean more than power cleans are gonna improve your power clean. I love power cleans, but they respond almost like completely like 2-foot jumping, right? In that you have to train and become a different athlete and train to train, and then the power clean is almost the output. But the input that improves it are those heavy ass Olympic lifts from the floor, the variations, the accessory work for it. I would say it's like the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the power clean gains are gonna come from all the other training, and 20% of the power clean gains are gonna come from the power cleaning. At least that's how I've personally responded, and it's how I see a lot of athletes respond. Beginners, not so much. Elite athletes, definitely. This brings me to another point. A lot of athletes ask me what I did in the beginning, because that's when I improved the most. But when you're a beginner, you can subject your body to almost any training stimulus and variable, and you're gonna improve. What you need to look at is what is making the athletes with the high training age that are in elite levels of performance, the guys that improve there, what did they do? Because that's the good training. That's the stuff that's really freaking difficult to do, okay? And if you follow those principles that make elite athletes better and you use them as a beginner, that's when results get insane. So that's a lesson I learned. I used to just try to power clean a lot. Well, honestly, not used to, like recently. I'm talking in the last 2 years. I would try to get my power clean up by power cleaning, and I would have sessions where I was doing clean pulls, and I would be prideful and I would want to power clean, so I would change the clean pulls to power cleans instead of having stuck to the clean pulls and the percentages. Clean pull heavy, you're not going to regret it. The last few lessons are about injuries, and I'm just gonna speed run them because talking about injuries is pretty boring, and a higher percentage of athletes are healthy and not hurt. But remember, a wise person learns from other people's mistakes. Even if you're not dealing with an injury, learn from this. Start doing ISOs. Do it as a warm-up and do it on rest days. You won't regret it. Start doing feel-good lifting, specifically slow concentric strength training on knee extension movements. If you're feeling banged up, I wish I would never have stuck to deep back squatting when it was painful. That messed my back up for a long, long time. I would have just stuck to half squats. And the last one, this one's just for me. I wish I would have treated TFL pain that I was feeling, like tendon pain at the knee, and I would have prevented a tendon rupture. So that's it for the video. If you want to get coached by me to jump higher, go to THPstrength.com, use the code THP to get 10% off of your first month. If you like the video, like the video. It helps the channel a lot, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.